Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog podcast. Today is Saturday, March 10th. Second podcast today, recapping the games that went on earlier in college basketball. Make picks for tomorrow's games because they're all set up. And I'm going to go over some dream matchups, not just dream matchups, but matchups I would like to see in the NCAA tournament. All right, results so far today. The first team to punch a ticket into the big dance today was UMBC with the upset win over Vermont, 65-62. I had Vermont on the podcast. Jarius Miles hit a long three-pointer with less than a second remaining to lift Maryland, Baltimore County into the big dance. Jarius Lyles, the man, the hero for them, 27 points. Trey Bill Haynes put up 18 in defeat, and it sure looks like that Vermont's headed to the NIT. Sunbelt semifinal, UT Arlington defeated Louisiana by a score of 71-68. Eric Neal put up 18 in the win. Frank Bartley put up 19 in defeat. And Texas Arlington is heading to the Sunbelt Championship. Harvard defeated Cornell 74-55 in the Ivy League semifinal. I picked Harvard on the podcast. I actually also had a Louisiana Lafayette, so I was wrong there. But I was right with Harvard. Seth Towns put up 24 in the win. Matt Morgan put up 19 in defeat. Harvard will play for the Ivy League title tomorrow, and I'll pick that game winner on the podcast. Cincinnati defeated Memphis 70-60 in the AAC semifinal. Cincinnati will advance. Big second half for Cincinnati. They came back from a 13-point halftime deficit to Memphis, and they outscored them 41-18 in the second half to get the 10-point victory. Jaron Cumberland put up 18 in the win. Jamal Johnson put up 17 in defeat. Cincinnati will play for the AAC title tomorrow, and I'll pick that game on the podcast later. Kentucky defeated Alabama by a score of 86-63 in the SEC semifinal. Wenyen Gabriel put up 23 in the win, and Colin Sexton put up 21 in defeat. I think Alabama's headed to the dance. Kentucky is playing for the SEC title tomorrow, and I'll pick that game later in the podcast. Rhode Island defeated St. Joe's 90-87 in the A-10 semifinal. Close game. And Fats Russell was big for the Rams, as well as Andre Berry, who had 18 points in the win, and Shavar Newkirk put up 18 in defeat for St. Joe's. Give St. Joe's credit for hanging around. I had Rhode Island and Kentucky on the podcast, and Cincinnati, if I mentioned that before. In the MEAC men's final, the team that's going to the big dance is NC Central, who got a 71-63 win over Hampton. I had Hampton on the podcast. I was wrong. Malik Trent Street put up 15 in the win, and Pablo Rivas put up 22 in defeat. Georgia State defeated Georgia Southern by a score of 73-67 in the Sun Belt semifinals. Georgia State will advance to the Sun Belt Championship to play UT Arlington. Isaiah Williams put up 21 in the win, and Tookie Brown put up 25 in defeat. Penn defeated Yale 80-57 in the Ivy League semifinal, and Penn will advance to play Harvard in the Ivy League championship game. A.J. Brodeur put up 25 in the win, and Blake Reynolds put up 11 in defeat. Can't wait to pick these games. Tennessee defeated Arkansas by a score of 84-66 in the SEC semifinal. Jordan Bone put up 19 in the win, and Daryl Macon put up 19 in defeat. Big win for Tennessee to keep their hopes of a possible 3 seed alive. Davidson defeated St. Bonaventure 82-70 the A-10 semifinal. Big win for Davidson. They have a chance to steal a bid tomorrow from somebody. And you know what? I don't think it's going to be St. Bonaventure, because I think St. Bonaventure deserves to be in. I think they do make the at-large field over the likes of St. Mary's and Nevada and Middle Tennessee. Peyton Aldridge put up 24 in the win, and Jalen Adams put up 20 in defeat. Davidson will play Rhode Island for the A-10 title tomorrow. Houston defeated Wichita State 77-74 in the AAC semifinal, which was an outstanding game to watch. Rob Gray put up 33 in the win, and Landry Shamet put up 19 in defeat. It was an outstanding game. And now the picks for tomorrow. First game tomorrow at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Penn Harvard, Ivy League final. The best guy on the court will be Seth Towns of Harvard, but home court advantage will propel Penn to the big dance. So give me Penn, the Penn Quakers, to make the big dance. Kentucky and Tennessee in the SEC final. Give me the Kentucky Wildcats. They'll have the best guys on the court. They have the better head coach. They're a big game team. So give me the Wildcats to win this game and maybe sneak up a seed line higher than they should be. A-10 final. Davidson against Rhode Island. Great matchup. Peyton Aldridge, E.C. Matthews, talent abound on the floor. I think Aldridge is going to be the best player on the court. But give me Rhode Island in a close one. I would love to see Davidson win so we could have 3 A-10 teams in the tournament and a possible. I think if Davidson were to win the auto, they'd be a 12 seed lock and a popular pick the upset of 5. So I'd love to see Davidson win this game, but I just think Rhode Island's the better team, although Davidson will have the best player on the court. UT Arlington against Georgia State in the Sun Belt final. And Georgia State has the best player on the court in this game, in DeMarcus Simmons. So give me Georgia State Panthers to go to the big dance. And last but not least, the American Athletic Conference Final. Houston-Cincinnati should be a fantastic game. Rob Gray, Jacob Evans, Gary Clark, all on the floor. Although Villanova, Wichita State, probably a better team than Houston. I think Cincinnati's a better team than Houston. And Cincinnati plays defense, and I think they can slow down Houston. This is going to be a close game. But give me Clark, Evans, and company to receive the AAC title and possibly sneak up on that 2 line. So give me the Cincinnati Bearcats to win the American Athletic Conference title. 2 big NBA games, one tonight that I picked earlier on the podcast, but the 2 I'm talking about are both tomorrow. First is a matinee game between the Golden State Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Good for the Timberwolves being on ABC. Yes, and Curry's hurt right now with the bum ankle, but give me the Warriors over the Timberwolves. I think the Wolves are going to miss Jimmy Butler in a spot like this. And the game that I'm most intrigued for tomorrow night on the NBA slate, LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers playing Lonzo Ball and the Los Angeles Lakers from Staples Center. Could be LeBron's future team. It's funny because Isaiah Thomas is playing against his former team, and on the flip side, Larry Nance Jr. and Jordan Clarkson return to Staples Center. Give me the Lakers in an entertaining, wild game in the high 120s from Staples Center, like a 128-125 Laker win. Now I'm going to go over some dream matchups I want to see in the tournament. I'm going to go through teams that are... I'm probably going to hit all 68 teams that are likely in the field, and a couple other candidates that either A, are playing for a conference title tomorrow, or teams that are right there on the bubble that I think have a shot to get in. Cincinnati, teams I would like to see them face. Wichita State, because they're a conference rival. Houston, because they're a conference rival. West Virginia, because it's Bob Huggins against his ex-team. Because Bob Huggins used to coach Cincinnati, and plus Cincinnati and West Virginia used to be in the Big East together, so that brings some intrigue. UCLA was a 2017 round of 32 rematch. And then you have Virginia, who's a defensive-minded team. You have Kansas State, which would be a 2017 round of 64 rematch. Duke, that'd be fascinating. Could they slow down Bagley and company? North Carolina, can they slow down an elite offense with Joel Berry and Luke May leading the way? Florida, because they're similar teams in which they play decent defense and they're both veteran-laden teams. And then Arizona, and whether they can stop the likes of Alonzo Trier and DeAndre Ayton. Wichita State, Cincinnati conference rival, Houston conference rival. Kentucky, 2017 and 2014 round of 32 rematches. Loyola Chicago is an old conference rival. Gonzaga, 2013 round of 32 rematch. Notre Dame, 2015 Sweet 16 rematch. Kansas, in-state rival. Arizona, 2016 round of 64 rematch. Houston, you got Wichita State, who's a conference rival. Cincinnati, who's a conference rival. Texas in-state, TCU in-state, Texas Tech in-state, Baylor in-state. And then you have Virginia, West Virginia, early season rematch. West Virginia is one of the 2 teams to knock off Virginia this year. And I want to see if Virginia can get revenge on them or whether West Virginia can go 2 for 2 against the unequivocal best team in the country that's going to be the number 1 overall seed come tomorrow afternoon. Or tomorrow evening, I should say. Duke, conference rival. North Carolina, conference rival. Virginia Tech, conference and in-state rival. Clemson, conference rival. Notre Dame, conference rival. Well, we'll see if they get into that large field. Louisville, conference rival. Miami, conference rival. Florida State, conference rival. Villanova, regular season rematch from last season, which was an unbelievable game in which Villanova won at the buzzer in Philadelphia last year. And in Florida, the 2017 round of 32 rematch. Duke, Carolina, conference rival. Virginia, conference rival. And then all the teams I just listed, Miami and Florida State and Clemson and keep going down the list. NC State. Villanova, because that could have been the Elite Eight last year. Maybe it'll be Elite Eight this year or even Final Four this year, depending on the bracket breaks. West Virginia, it'd be fun to see Press Virginia against Duke. Kansas, because if it's a blue blood. Michigan State, regular season rematch and a blue blood. Kentucky, a blue blood. UCLA, a blue blood school. Alabama, because of Colin Sexton. Missouri, because of Michael Porter Jr. Arizona, because of DeAndre Ayton. Oklahoma, because of Trae Young. Notre Dame, conference rival. North Carolina, obviously Duke. And then you got Notre Dame and Virginia and NC State and Clemson and all those schools I listed before as conference rivals. Gonzaga, the 2017 title game rematch. Oregon, 2017 Final Four rematch. Kentucky, 2017 Elite Eight rematch. And plus, they're a blue blood, too. UCLA, because they're a blue blood. That could have been the Elite Eight last year. Arkansas, 2017 round of 32 rematch, in which Arkansas hung around with them last year. Arizona, because of Ayton. West Virginia, because of Press Virginia. Wichita State, because Wichita State's a big game team. It'd be fun to see them play with North Carolina. And I mentioned NC State before. Miami, North Carolina, because of a conference rival, and then that close game earlier in the year in which Jaquan Newton hit the buzzer beater. Then you got Virginia, Florida, with Florida's the in-state rival. Florida State's conference and in-state. Michigan State, 2017 round of 64 rematch. Clemson, you got North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, Miami, Virginia, Tech, all conference rivals. And then NC State, you got your conference rivals. And then a fun one would be Arizona because it's a regular season rematch, and then Villanova because it's the 2015 round of 32 rematch in which NC State upset Villanova in 2015, as I just mentioned. Virginia Tech, you got all your conference rivals. And that would be fun to see, especially them against Virginia. And in Louisville, you got your rivals that are in the conference. Kentucky, in-state rival, although they play every year. That was the 2014 Sweet 16, in which Kentucky beat Louisville in that game. Seton Hall would be an early season rematch. Michigan would be around the 32 rematch. UC Irvine would be a 2015 round of 64 rematch, assuming Irvine wins the Big West game later tonight. Notre Dame has all of its conference rivals. West Virginia, 2017 round of 32 rematch. Wichita State, 2015 Sweet 16 rematch. Kentucky, 2015 Elite 8 rematch. And then possibly, if they were to win the Southland tournament, Stephen F. Austin, 2016 round of 32 rematch. Florida State, you got your conference rivals, and maybe Florida for an in-state rival. UMBC is interesting. It sucks that Maryland wasn't good this year, else UMBC against Maryland would have been fun. So there's not really any intrigue for them, in my opinion, because that's probably like a 14 or a 15 seed that's going to be playing a good team. So maybe they catch a weak 3 seed like an Auburn or a Tennessee. Maybe. And then Lipscomb, who just won the Atlantic Sun tournament last week. Like I mentioned, Tennessee, it's an in-state rivalry and possibly a week 3-4 seed. And then Clemson, like I mentioned, a possible week 4 seed. Rhode Island, your conference rivals in St. Bonaventure and maybe Davidson if they get in. St. Mary's, they could have played them in the regular season, but St. Mary's turned them down. Arizona State against Bobby Hurley. Duke, because of the Hurley connection to Duke. Oregon, your 2017 round of 32 rematch. Creighton, your 2017 round of 64 rematch. St. Bonaventure has your, obviously their conference rivals would be fun. Maybe if the seeding were to break weirdly, or if there was a couple random upsets, Buffalo, if they end up in the same bracket, let's say if it's like if Buffalo's a 12 or 13 or a 14 and they upset somebody in Rhode Island's like the 7 or the 8 or whatever. I'm sorry, not the like 7-6 or 5 even, if things break right tomorrow. Although Bonaventure and Buffalo, Rhode Island I was thinking about. But Buffalo, St. Bonaventure, the case for that is like I said, a couple weird upsets. Like if Buffalo's a 14, St. Bonaventure's an 11, the 14 knocks off the 3 and Bonaventure beats the 6. That's how you would get a possible Buffalo, St. Bonaventure in the round of 32. Davidson, obviously our conference rivals in Bonaventure and Rhode Island, and then Duke, it's the Curry brothers rivalry. I just think that's fun. So Villanova, you have all your conference rivals. Virginia, as I mentioned, the rematch from last regular season. This regular season, a possible rematch against Gonzaga. North Carolina would be the 2016 title game rematch. Oklahoma, the 2016 Final Four rematch and the Trae Young factor. Kansas, 2016 Elite Eight rematch. Texas A&M, 2016 Sweet 16 rematch. Wait. Do they play in the Sweet 16? I think he did play Texas A&M in the Sweet 16 that year, to double check. And then NC State, as I mentioned, they upset Villanova in the round of 32 in 2015. And if, say, Villanova's a 1 and Penn's a 16, that would be fun. An in-state rival. Xavier, I mentioned all the rivalries from the conference. Gonzaga would be an Elite Eight rematch from last year. Arizona would be a 2016 or 2017 Sweet 16 rematch. And the Sean Miller connection, obviously. Florida State would be your rematch from round of 32 from last year. And then Cincinnati's your in-state rival. So that would be fun to have those two in the same bracket. Seton Hall, the rest of the Big East rivalries. Arkansas, round of 64 rematch from last year. And then Gonzaga, round of 64 rematch from 2 years ago. Creighton, you got the in-state rivals. Maybe Baylor, because you played Baylor in the regular season. That would be fun. And Rhode Island would be the 2014 round of 64 rematch. Providence, all your conference rivals. Rhode Island would be fun because it's an in-state. USC, 2017 first four rematch, and then North Carolina, 2016 round of 32 rematch. Butler, the ones that would intrigue me, the 2010 title game rematch against Duke. 2015 round of 64 game against Texas. Bonaventure, former conference rival. Wright State, former conference rival. See how the seeding breaks. Eastern Washington, we don't know because we really don't know if who wins that game, whether it's Eastern Washington or who are they playing? And I know I picked them too. Oh, it is Montana against Eastern Washington. We'll see. If Montana is like a 14, maybe they catch a week 13 or a week 3 seed. Radford, it'd be fun if they got Virginia or Virginia Tech because they're in-state rivals. Michigan State got all the Big Ten rivals that would possibly make it. Duke, 2015 Final Four rematch. Kansas, 2017 round of 32 rematch. Miami, 2017 round of 64 rematch. It'd be fun if Middle Tennessee got in as an at-large, but I doubt it because they lost their conference tournament. They're in the weak CUSA. The round of 64 rematch from 2 years ago, that would be a lot of fun. Virginia, 2015 Elite Eight and 2014 Sweet 16 rematch. And then North Carolina would be a regular season rematch. Ohio State, it'd be really, really intriguing if they played Butler sometime in the tournament because it's Chris Holtman's former team. Michigan, you got all your conference rivals. Oregon, last year Sweet 16. Louisville, last year round the 32. Oklahoma State, last year round the 64 rematch. Kansas, you got all your conference rivals. Oregon was in the Elite Eight last year against Kansas. Purdue was last year's Sweet 16 opponent for them. Michigan State was their last year's round of 32 opponent for them. Villanova was Elite Eight from 2 years ago. Kentucky, Duke, UCLA, North Carolina, Arizona, all blue bloods. That'd be fun against Kansas. And then Arizona State would be a regular season rematch, as well as Washington, although I doubt Washington gets in, and then Texas A&M, regular season rematch / former conference rival. Texas Tech, all the conference rivals, and then Texas A&M's in-state and plus a former conference rival. West Virginia, you got all your conference rivals. Gonzaga, because of the Sweet 16 last year. Notre Dame, round of 32 last year. Bucknell, round of 64 last year. Stephen F. Austin, round of 64 rematch from 2016. Kentucky, regular season rematch, and then the rematch from the 2015 Sweet 16. Buffalo, 2015 round of 64 rematch. Louisville's a former conference rival. Cincinnati, former conference rival, and then the Bob Huggins thing. And in Texas A&M, regular season rematch. Kansas State, you have all your rivals from in conference. Kentucky, 2014 round of 64 rematch. TCU, you have all your conference rivals, and then your in-state rival in Texas A&M. Baylor, you have all your conference rivals. Florida would be fun, rematch from last year's Sweet 16. USC would be a rematch from the round of 32 last year. New Mexico State would be fun if Baylor was a 5 and New Mexico State was a 12. In the 2017 round of 64 rematch, but I doubt Baylor's a 5. Yale would be interesting if they they didn't win. The Yale would have been interesting because they knocked off Baylor in the 2016 round of 64. Georgia State would be interesting because they knocked off the Baylor in 2015. Texas A&M's in state and then former conference rival. Oklahoma State, you have all your conference rivals. Wichita State would be fun because it's a regular season rematch. Oklahoma would be interesting. Alabama would be fun because it's a regular season rematch, and then Trae Young against Colin Sexton. UC Irvine, they played Louisville in 2015 round of 64. That'd be a weird rematch. Charleston would be fun if they played Clemson because it's an in-state. Western Kentucky, if they were to win the CUSA. Purdue in the regular season rematch because they knocked off Purdue. Penn, the fun one would be Villanova. Wright State and Harvard. If Harvard were to win tomorrow, we don't know. Wright State. The intriguing one I mentioned before, Butler, only because that was their former conference rival. Buffalo. Arizona State would be fun, only because it's Bobby Hurley's former team. And then West Virginia, because it was the rematch from the round of 64 from 2015. Iona has played a lot of teams in this field. If Oregon were again in, that's who they played last year. Hampton, they're in often. They're probably going to be a 16 seed. Loyola Chicago would be fun if they played Wichita State. They used to be their conference rival. Clemson, Tennessee, and Auburn are possible week 4 seeds. I don't think Nevada gets in as an at-large, but if they do, they'll probably be in the playing game or a 10 seed. So any week 7 seed or whatever, 6 seed, maybe Oklahoma or TCU or Kansas State possibly. I don't think Gonzaga will be as low as a 6, but it'd be fun to see Nevada against Gonzaga again, like they happened this season. San Diego State, if they were to win the Mountain West tonight, USC and UCLA would be fun because they're in-state. New Mexico, the fun one would be in-state rival New Mexico State. LIU, Brooklyn won the NEC, and they're probably headed for a 16. Murray State, Clemson, Tennessee, Auburn are possible week 4 or 5 seeds that Murray's could possibly knock off. Arizona, you have your conference rivals. You have Xavier, Sweet 16 rematch from last year, and it's Sean Miller's former team. St. Mary's, round of 32 rematch from last year if St. Mary's gets in. Wichita State, 2016 round of 64 rematch. And then Michigan State against Arizona would be fun only because it's 2 scandal teams that got hit by scandals this year. Duke and North Carolina and Kansas are all blue bloods. That'd be fun that they play Arizona and all the talent on both sides of that. USC, you have your conference rivals. You have Baylor, who they played in the round of 32 last year, and in Providence, they had in the first 4 in last year. UCLA, you have your conference rivals. You have Kentucky, 2017 Sweet 16 rematch and a regular season rematch. Cincinnati 2017 round of 32 rematch. North Carolina, Duke, Kansas, and Michigan State are all blue bloods that be fun to see UCLA play against. If Oregon were to get back in, it'd be fun to see them play one of their conference rivals. Obviously, North Carolina in the 2017 Final Four rematch. Kansas in the Elite Eight rematch from last year. Michigan from the Sweet 16 rematch from last year. And then Rhode Island from the round of 32 rematch from a year ago. Arizona State, you got your conference rivals. It'd be fun to see them play Kansas and Xavier because you play them in the regular season. Rhode Island because of Hurley. It'd be the Hurley game. And then Duke because of Bob Hurley's connection with Duke. Bucknell played West Virginia in the round of 64 a year ago and hung tight with them. It'd be interesting if those two teams hook up again this year, especially if West Virginia holds on to the current lead they have in the Big 12 title game. Auburn, you have your conference rivals. It'd be funny if they were to play Michigan State and Arizona, two teams I mentioned before that were involved in some scandals this year, and even Louisville for that matter. Tennessee, it'd be fun if they played any of their SEC rivalries. And in North Carolina, because they played each other in the regular season. And Tennessee's an improved team from when they played North Carolina earlier in the year as well. Florida, you have their conference rivals. Baylor in the possible Sweet 16 rematch from last year, regular season rematch as well. Virginia, 2017 round of 32 rematch. In-state rivals in Florida State and Miami. Loyola Chicago was another regular season rematch in which Loyola Chicago knocked off Florida at the O-Dome. And then Clemson in another regular season rematch. Kentucky, you have all your conference rivals. North Carolina in the possible Elite Eight matchup from last year. UCLA in the possible Sweet 16 rematch from last year. Notre Dame in the 2015 Elite Eight rematch. West Virginia 2015 Sweet 16 rematch / regular season rematch from this year. Purdue they played in the 2015 round of 32. Michigan 2014 Elite Eight. Louisville in-state in 2014 Sweet 16. Wichita State 2014 round of 32 and the 2017 round of 32 as well. Kansas State 2014 round of 64 rematch, and in blue blood schools such as Michigan State, Duke, Arizona, and Kansas. And then Missouri, you got all your conference rivals. And it'd be fun to see them play Duke because it'd be Porter against Bagley, Oklahoma because of Porter versus Young, and then Arizona because of Porter versus DeAndre Ayton. Arkansas, it'd be fun if they played any of their conference rivals. North Carolina, round of 32 rematch from last year. Seton Hall, 2017, round of 64 rematch. Oklahoma State, regular season rematch from last year. A&M, you got all your conference rivals and all of your ex-rivals from the Big 12. It'd be fun if they played Arizona because they played each other in the regular season. Arizona State because both them and Texas A&M were surprise teams earlier in the season. And in Alabama, it'd be fun if you had any of your conference rivals. Duke because of Bagley against Sexton, maybe Bagley against Ayton with Arizona. And in Michigan State, maybe Bagley against Bridges and Jackson. And in Oklahoma in a regular season matchup, and obviously Young against Sexton. UNC Greensboro, it'd be fun if they played Duke or Carolina just because it's in-state. If Stephen F. Austin were to win its conference tournament, any rematch with Notre Dame or West Virginia from 2016 would be fun. Southeastern Louisiana, if they make it in, they'd probably be a 16th seed. Texas Southern, it'd be fun if they played any of the Texas teams such as Texas TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, or Texas A&M. South Dakota State, it's probably going to be a 12th seed. So it'd be fun if they got Clemson, who could be a week 5 seed. And the other fun one would be is if they got Gonzaga. If Gonzaga slides to 5 and if South Dakota State's 12. Or if South Dakota State's 13, Gonzaga's a 4. Gonzaga's a 3, South Dakota State's a 14. It'd be a fun little rematch because South Dakota State has an awesome player in Mike Baum. It'd be fun to see them play Gonzaga. UT Arlington. It'd be fun if they played any of the Texas schools. Or Tennessee or Auburn or Clemson, that could be possible week 4 seeds if they were to fall on the 13 line. And if they were to fall on the 14 line, Tennessee and Auburn would be possible week 3 seeds. Georgia State, it'd be fun to see them play Baylor again because they played each other in the first round in 2015. I doubt that would happen. Georgia State's probably going to be at 14, so Tennessee and Auburn are possible week 3 seeds. New Mexico State, it'd be fun to see them play New Mexico, obviously. I mentioned Tennessee and Auburn as possible week 3 or 4 seeds, and then Clemson is possible week 4 or 5. And then Baylor in the 2017 round of 64 rematch. If St. Mary's were to get in, it'd be fun to see them play Gonzaga. It'd be fun to see them play Arizona, which was an awesome game last year in the round of 32. And last but not least, Gonzaga. St. Mary's, obviously conference rival. North Carolina in the title game from last year. Xavier, rematch from the Elite Eight. West Virginia, rematch from last year's Sweet 16. I mentioned the South Dakota State round of 64 rematch. Regular season rematches with possibly Villanova or Florida. And Oklahoma State, they played in the round of 64 in 2014. That's it for my podcast. I might be back late tomorrow night with my thoughts on the bracket. I hope you guys have a nice night.